I'm Emmanuel and welcome to this tutorial on ISO 27001 Annex A 5.12. Now this is going to focus on information classification. Now classification talks about just sorting out data into various categories, whether it's public or confidential. Now the classification helps organizations sort their data based on how sensitive the data is and what kind of protection that it will need. Now in this session, we will break it down step by step, covering why classification matters, how to implement it, and the key considerations for your organization. Why is information classification important? Now, every organization handles data differently. Not all require the same level of security. For example, if your company's marketing material do not need the same protection as your payroll or your finance, they will handle the data differently. Marketing materials. Now, when you're talking about marketing materials, we're talking about the various brochures, the website content. Now, all these are kind of information that your company is going to process or your company will have. And so, if we classify information into those materials like marketing, finance, payroll, you realize that now we give it a different level of protection. If all data is treated equally, organizations may either protect insignificant data and wasting their resources, or they will even underprotect their critical data, which will increase the security risks that comes with the protection of data. Now, proper information classification ensures that there are different categories of it. We have sensitive data that is adequately protected. We have employees understanding on how to handle those different kinds of information. We have security resources that are allocated effectively. And we have regulational data. Now, when we are talking about sensitive data, we are talking about data that could harm an organization if it is exposed. Same way that when we are talking about the employees' data, we are saying that how do the employees handle or how do they store, share, or dispose certain information. Now, when we are talking about security resources, we are talking about how resources are allocated. And when we are talking about the regulatory requirements, we are talking about how they meet regulations like GDPR, ISO, HIPAA, and the various regulations. Now, creating an information classification scheme. Now, per the ISO requirement, an effective classification scheme categorizes information based on its sensitive and protection needs. Now, ISO has a 3-level for us, or a 3-tier system, which often works. There's the public, that is information that is intended for widespread distribution, where everyone can see those kind of information. There is internal, which talks about information that is supposed to be within the organization, meaning that this kind of data is for internal use only, such as our policies and our procedures, operational reports, our company policies, the data that we use within the organization. Then we have confidential. These are the highest level of data. Now, the confidential data can go to the extent of covering employees' records, financial statements, customer data, and trade secrets. Confidential data is talking about data that, when exposed, could cause serious or legal implications or financial reputational damage to your organization. So ISO provides a 4-tier model, and that is where you have highly sensitive category for that could threaten survival if exposed. However, many find a 3-tier model simpler and easier to manage, but you can add a highly sensitive if you require, and that is data that, if those data are leaked, might cause companies to actually fail or collapse. Now, what are the steps to be able to implement information classification? Now, you need to be able to, number one, define and document your classification levels. You have to clearly outline what falls under each category level. You need to align it with various legal and regulatory requirements and get approval from senior management about those stakeholders. And that is why we talk about first identifying that. The second is to be able to develop an information classification and handling policy. Now, you need to be able to establish rules for how each level is handled. Whether encrypting of the data, where those data are going to be stored. You need to define how people get access to those confidential or those kind of data. You need to also ensure compliance with regulations on how you are going to handle those data or store or transmit those kind of data. Then the third one is talking about how you need to train employees and communicate the policy. Now, your employees are always your biggest risk. So you need to provide training on how to classify and handle these data. You need to be able to have a procedure or a step-to-step guideline to make it easier for them to be able to access this kind of data. Then you need to train them, conduct regular training sessions for them to be able to help, for them to understand. Then the fourth one is to implement technical and procedural controls. Now, you need to label documents and digital files by classifying their labels. You need to apply access control to restrict the confidential data. And you need to be able to make sure that you are using encryption for sensitive data that is at rest and data that is in transit. I already explained encryption to you in one of our previous videos. So you see the link below and you understand what encryption means. Now, the last one I want to talk about is regularly review and updates of the classification scheme. You don't just want to say that I have classified my environment and that is it. No, you need to conduct periodic reviews to keep categories relevant. You need to adjust classifications when needed, or adjust the classifications, or you need to be able to make sure that you are adjusting those classifications to make sure that it's meeting the needs of your business and also the various regulations. Then you need to coordinate with your partners and your third parties on how this classification align, and make sure that you are doing your checks and your balances and making sure that annual reviews are done. Now, what are some of the common mistakes that you need to avoid as an organization or as someone who is helping your company to be able to meet the needs of this control? Now, I'm going to give you 4 tips. Tip number 1, failure to mark documents properly. Many people don't label their documentations well, and so they mishandle the data that is being given to them. If you don't label it well, and you label a sensitive document as non-sensitive document, you realize that you don't give it the right protection. So now it comes to affect you, overcomplicating the system, where you have too many level lists, causing confusion within the organization. No, don't do that. Then the third one is neglecting regular reviews. Your policies will one day be outmoded. And so you need to make sure that you are updating your schemes, you are updating your policies on a regularly basis. Have a schedule on how you do that. And lack of employee training. Untrained staff won't apply the correct policy. Why? Because they don't understand the importance of what you are communicating to them. So you need to be able to make sure that you have all those in place. Now, what does auditors look out for when they come to be able to review this control? Now, first, they will check the existence of a documented classification policy. They will make sure that evidence that the policy is implemented and enforced. Remember, there is a difference between a policy that is documented, a policy that is implemented, and a policy that is enforced. Documented means that it's written. Policy that is implemented means that yes, you are aware it is being implemented. It's not just written, but it's working. And enforced means that there are checks and balances that is also in place to make sure that that policy that is documented is working effectively and well followed. And a data assets register mapping assets to the various classification levels also is very, very important. Then alignment with protection laws like GDPR. These are some of the things that the auditor will be able to look out for when they come and assess this specific control in your environment. Now, let's wrap up. Now, information classification, remember, is a foundational element of an effective ISMS. If you implement this well, your organization will be able to protect sensitive data efficiently and ensure compliance and reduce the risks that comes with this. I hope this makes so much sense to you, and I hope you learned a lot from this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next class.